Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to another South African Coin Talk show. Our special guest tonight, and not a guest anymore, he seems to be making his presence well known on our talk show, is none other than Richard Stone from the South African Mint. Good evening, Richard, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anthony. Good evening.
Good. Well, we're going to go straight into the talk, and Richard has kindly decided to do a presentation on something that he stumbled upon, but I'm not going to steal his thunder. He's going to elaborate on how he stumbled across this wonderful presentation that's going to come through, and tell us more about it. So, Richard, over to you, and you can go through your presentation.
Thank you, Anthony. Yes, I'm very keen to share with you a discovery that was made not too long ago at the South African Mint. We discovered a book that, or I should rather say an album, which contains drawings of the most wonderful collection of drawings that I'd like to share with the viewers. That's the book right there, and this book had been gathering dust for what must have been decades. It is a book that was discovered in a cupboard under some other books, and I just have to show you the contents of this album. Now, you can see from the binding, it says Drawings, Die and Metal Workshop SA Mint. And in the background of that image, you can actually see the SA Mint Library, a truly wonderful collection of books, but this one is really special. The drawings contained in this book are far older than the book itself, and it's my guess that this book was bound, or that it was compiled in the early 60s. So the book itself is not that old, but its contents are really fascinating. So I'm going to take you through this album and invite you to please add your comments. If you come across something, I am by no means an expert on numismatic history. I am quite experienced in the discipline of coin design, in the context of which this book is absolutely fascinating. So on the first page, there is a Pretoria coat of arms of the city of Pretoria, and with explanation of some symbology. But it's on the next page that you see the title of the book, Drawings, Die and Metal Workshop SA Mint. So I have an enormous amount of slides to go through, so I'm not going to spend too much time on each illustration, although I do zoom in on some of the finer details. So the first thing we see is the design for the 1 shilling, and it's fascinating for me as a coin designer, and to be involved with product development at the SA Mint, to look at the original design intent of what the designer had in mind, and how that played out as a final coin. Now, this is certainly not the first edition of the shilling, but you can see how the typography changed, and also some very interesting changes that happened from the original design intent to the final coin. This design element, not sure exactly what that represents. You can see how that changed slightly in size, and also how they straightened out those lines. The wavy hair blowing in the wind was significantly reduced in size, and this Deus Regnat typographical device was removed. On the other side of that spread in the album is this medal of the South African Medical Council, showing a very strange and very unique double loop for the terminations of the ribbons to be appended in these beautifully designed floral elements. And we see the double protea, which is something that comes through on a lot of these designs. Beautifully ornate, I suppose you can call it like a landing, but really amazing drawings. On the second spread is this. I'm just turn it through 90 degrees. The title at the top of the page says "Free French Coin," and it's dated 1941. Now that is the date there is the 29th of September 1941. And this is if you go online and you look up this what happened on this date, it was the Moscow Conference during the Second World War, of course. And the day before General Guderian launched Operation Typhoon to attack Moscow, this design is signed by E. Naylor, but on Numista I found that the engraver is listed as Kurt Steinberg. Beautifully designed how the denomination would change, just a little detail at the bottom from 50 centimes to 1 franc at the bottom. Beautiful design. On the other side of the spread in the album is a medal that was designed for the Chartered Institute of Secretaries. Most of these designs were done at actual size. It's fascinating how they managed to space the typography correctly. Seeing that they didn't have the benefit of computers, they must have counted the amount of letters and then sort of draw the T first and then the preceding and ensuing letters on either side of it. Also, this beautiful actual size drawing of the Queen Victoria Maternity Hospital in Johannesburg, and I actually found an image of the pin itself online. And it's amazing how close and how accurate the interpretation of the drawing was. This is actually quite uncanny for the final result to be so close to the intended design intent. Beautiful badge design for Germiston Hospital. Note the writing at the bottom, which says all letters and outlines in gilt. Couldn't find an example of this. This is from the 21st of June 1945, which happened only several months after the end of the Second World War. Not sure what design this was for. I'm sure some of the viewers will be able to tell us. I'm not sure what the WSU or the KDB, but I'm led to believe that this is South Afrikaanse Spoorweë or South African Rail. Not sure what the H stands for. Unfortunately, the date was sliced off and it was pasted into this book.
So just a
yes.
quick thing. SARNH is South African Railways and Harbour.
Now you see, I didn't know that. I think it's a beautiful design, quite striking with the wings coming out of the wheel. So yeah, I'm hoping that what I don't know about these things, which is a lot, that you can help me with, Anthony, or then some of your viewers, if they can write in the comments. Not sure about the anatomical correctness of that Springbok portrait, but you can see what the design intent was. This is a fascinating double-page spread, specifically the drawing on the left-hand page. This is a drawing of it says 1932 and 1 cent. I have no idea why it would say one cent if it was drawn in 1932, which would have been 29 years before the first decimal series. But talk about synchronicity. I received a very friendly email from a gentleman by the name of Philip McLaughlin, who is based in London, who was asking me about a square farthing design. He has written a wonderful article, which I believe, Anthony, will be published in Coin News, which is absolutely fascinating, where he touches upon a patent piece that was found in the Royal Mint Museum. I will certainly invite you to track that article down and to read it. It's absolutely fascinating. Now, what you see there is drawn on tracing paper, so it might have been a trace from another drawing. I'm not sure. Note at the bottom left-hand side, there's a small rectangle or square with rounded corners, which says actual size underneath it. I believe, and I got this from Philip McLaughlin's article, that the Australians were producing pattern pieces from 1919 to 1921, also to do a squarish, I think it was a penny or a half penny, but these were never adopted because square coins don't work in coin machines. So an absolutely beautiful drawing. And on the right hand side, also interesting to note that this has, just before I step off the square coin, it has beading, which I believe on the pattern piece that is held by the Royal Mint Museum is missing. And then a design for a badge of the SA Nursing Council. And it's fascinating to consider that this design has not changed. I believe that this drawing was done in 1945, or that this badge was designed in 1945, again with a double protea, which we saw on the medal earlier in this book. And if you look at this from a designer point of view, what's interesting to note are these holes, these pinpricks that were obviously made by the protractor that the designer used to draw it with. So these lines, the outer lines, would have been drawn from the leftmost hole using a protractor, and then the top curves would have been drawn from those ones. This is absolutely beautiful to see. I think it's a stunning design, Art Nouveau design with very soft flowing feminine lines, a very balanced, beautifully symmetrical and beautifully flowing design. This is a very small drawing, I think an application of that design to a medal. And I'm not sure whether the South African Nursing Council was established in 1944 or whether the model was, the medal design was established in 1944. Perhaps some of our viewers would know. This design was done on the 5th of February 1947. And then also how that badge could be extended into an award. Again, you can see the holes caused by the protractor with which it was drawn. Absolutely beautiful. The next spread shows three fascinating things, very different things. I should perhaps also just mention that the person that compiled this album did not seem to add these, not seem to arrange these drawings chronologically. So this is, now we've skipped forward to 1954, and this seems to be a police badge. I've got some close-ups also of an alternative design, which is found later in the book. But here is a regalia medal, so probably for the mayor of the borough of Newcastle, in a towel, with those absolutely gorgeous floral protea terminations on the ribbons. I think those are absolutely stunning. And here we see an early design, unfortunately undated, except for, so it was probably done in 1929, I'm guessing. A halfpenny design showing a variation of the design that was eventually adopted. A stunning silhouette drawing of an ox wagon. So I'm going to show you this design first. The police badge looks nothing like the police badges that we saw in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But this was marked as A, and I think, and this one is later in the book is marked as B. I've just put them here, and you can see the difference is the size of the ribbon at the bottom, which in design B goes up substantially further. And on the next spread, you can see the design that eventually became the halfpenny, and ultimately I think it was the 1 cent coin. I could be wrong, but and some other tiny little illustrations of either badges or pins, which I'll go into momentarily. I just want to show you. At the bottom of the left-hand side of the screen is a design for the 1 cent coin. It came out in 1961. Now, according to Brian Hearn's book, if I'm not mistaken, only 80 of these coins were made that have the full detail of the ground, of the sort of the grounding below the ox wagon, as opposed to subsequent editions of the coin. You can see that in the 1963 version, and you can see the original design intent was to include a sun, and to certainly have a full grounding, similar to a Krugerrand, I suppose, but a stunning design. Also interesting to see how these 4 protea arranged in a square, how that changed and eventually ended up on the coin. Typography also shrunk in size. On the other side of the page is the SACSA. I'm not sure, I don't know if you can help me, Anthony, but that is a tiny little drawing which seems to have done sometime in March of 1945. Also, I'm not sure what this was for. Transvaal HUAU. I don't know if the AU stands for gold. There's seems to be something to do with fish. But this seems to be the Pretoria chapter of whatever this organization was. Tiny little illustration. This is quite fascinating. I think the legend says "I serve Akdien." I'm not sure. Not sure what this was for, but it seems quite official with the crown, typical of imperial designs. And although the one at the top features a protractor hole that was used to draw the circle, the one at the bottom is obviously seems to have been done with a transfer, because the line qualities here makes me think that it was not drawn with ink, but probably transferred from a piece of paper that was inverted to see what this would look in mirror image, probably in anticipation of what the die would look like to create this with. But I also see a protractor hole here, so I could be wrong. This doesn't have a date on it, nor does this one. It says Onthou, remember 1939, 1945. And I managed to track this down online. Obviously 1939-45 being the beginning and end of the Second World War. So certainly some commemorative purpose. Many designs found in this book for coronation medals. This is a design that I think ended up not being used. See, the date is 1953. This would obviously be for the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. It was done on the 17th of February. This is just a couple of months before the coronation itself. So this is one design. And then also these ones. Now, it seems to be that different city councils commissioned the Mint to produce commemorative coronation souvenirs in the form of these medals. You can see Kimberley on the left, and you can see Port Shepstone on the right. It's fascinating to think that a town as small as Port Shepstone would commission the Mint to create a medal for it. And then at the top of that page, you can see a photograph of this illustration. Lots of the drawings that were pasted into this album are actually photographs, not the original drawings, of which this is a good example. Here we see one for East London on the left, and also for Bulawayo on the right. At the bottom of the page, you can see, at the bottom of the page on the left, you can see some alternative designs, and all of these seem to be dated 1953. So a coat of arms, and then typography, but just the amount of these. There's another one for Bulawayo, and on the right-hand page, we see what seems to be regalia for the mayoress of Ubongo, and it's dated October 1954. This is obviously a photograph, but at the top of that page, I found this fascinating piece of of mint history, where it's obviously like a functional piece of paper on which the number of pieces that were brokaged, getalstukke beskadig, getal goeie stukke geslaan, number of good pieces struck. And for me, this is fascinating because this is quite close to home as far as how we go about determining scrap rates on the coins that we manufacture. But you also see the embossing, and this is the negative. So it was embossed on the other side to test probably an embossing plate for the City Council of Pretoria. The next spread shows the South African a design done for the South African Ornithological Society. I could find no record of any badge or pin like that. And on the right is the design for a hallmark, for the silver hallmark, dated 1947, showing a rectangle with cropped corners and then that U shape with a lion's head. I'm going to refer back to this because there's some later pages in the album that also show other hallmarks. And then the Institute of Park Administration, Natura Artis Magistra, which I believe means all art is taught by nature. And then mens sana in corpora sano, which I believe means a healthy body and a healthy mind. Not sure what organization that was done for. Certainly seems to be some kind of medical thing. And at the bottom, a cross design for a medal. This is a photograph, not of a drawing. And I think that's why it looks so rough, because it seems to have been done at actual size. The next page is yet another example of some fascinating little designs that were made. The first one I'd like to show you is the Springs Musical Festival. And when I looked this up online, can you believe that the Springs, which is now called the Springs Music Festival, still exists? It was apparently started in 1941, I think, or certainly during the Second World War, as a benefit for soldiers that were fighting in the war. It's fascinating to think that this music festival is still going strong. Also, a design for the Transvaal Explosives and Chemical Workers Union. I'm not sure if that was a logo design or a medal design. It could have been both, with some very fascinating symbology used in that coat of arms. And also a photograph of a design that you can see later on in this book for the Potchefstroom Hospital. Quite a rough drawing there. Now, the DASA, I don't know what the DASA or the TFSR was, but this was a design done in 1922. And further on in the book, later on in the book, we also see a design for what seems to have been a medal design using the same construct. Beautiful Art Deco, typically Art Deco of that time, of the 20s. Monuments Commission, and I'm not sure if that was just a coat of arms or design for a medal. It's the illustration in the middle of that page, which is actually quite fascinating. I'll zoom in on it. So this was the Royal Visit Commemorative Medal. And you can see that I also managed to track down the resulting medal that was actually produced in 1947 for the Royal Visit. And you can see here the figures have crowns on their heads. But what's fascinating is at the bottom, it says here on the obverse, the above heads are not supposed to represent likenesses, likeness of their majesties. And I think what that means is that that the illustration here does not represent a likeness, but obviously the medal should be an accurate likeness. You can see that there was some indication of what the wording could be, but they hadn't decided on the final wording, and eventually wrote Royal Visit, Koninklijke Besoek on the outside. And I think the reverse of this medal is actually quite accurate of what resulted. Although the arrangement of the words on the reverse is different from what the illustration was. Sorry for the bad focus on this. This is for the South African Legion, and this is a staggeringly detailed little illustration. It's only about 3 centimeters high, and I managed to track down the resulting badge that resulted from this illustration. The one there is not in great shape, but you can see how accurately the design intent translated. And then also a photograph of what seems to be an ink drawing, and I'm not sure what this was for. So I'm guessing it was for the South African Air Force, although the shape of this wing in the illustration, looks quite different from certainly from these cloth badges. It's actually quite close to this badge at the bottom, which I believe the AP stands for aerial photography. But a beautiful drawing, one of the most beautiful winged designs I've seen. This people will immediately recognize South African infantry badge. I'm sure many people watching this video wore a beret with this a badge on it, although that's a gold version. I think the silver colored or chromed version is far more well known, but I think it's a good example of how the original design intent translated perfectly, and didn't have to be adapted in the ultimate design. On the other side of the double page spread is a design for something I don't know. Pretoria seems to refer to Pretoria, and CSSR is a clue, although I'm not sure what design this was done for. Fairly convoluted arrangement of symbols here. It's dated 10th of or 19th of October 1948. So in 1952 there was a Jan van Riebeeck festival, and this seems to be a design for a commemorative badge or medal that was produced for the event. The drawing is dated 2nd of November 1951, and it's interesting to see how the final result, how it differs from the original design drawing. You can see that the typography was placed on a ribbon which curved back towards the horizon. The position of Table Mountain was raised in order to make it more prominent, and these shards of light or beams of light were interrupted on the eventual one so as to better improve the legibility of 1952. And there seems to have been bronze and silver, sterling silver versions made of this. If you look at the top left one, the white metal one, if you turn that thing around, at the bottom you will see the hallmark that I described, that I showed earlier. And also on the right hand side, SAM, South African Mint, with 2 bullet points separating the letters in a cropped rectangle. I'm sure someone would be able to tell us what STG and what this symbol stands for, but that SAM, that hallmark, actually features later in the album. Also the RDLI Bowling Club, and the motto
Richard,
seems... Sure.
Just to go back to that previous one.
I'm sure you can help me here, Anthony.
So STG is sterling.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go back to the other picture, that actually depicts a map of South Africa at the bottom.
Yes, that's clearly the outline of the continental outline, showing
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But I think that would have been a very difficult product to make. Believe you me, to blank, unless it was cast. But to strike something like this is a nightmare. Also, given the relief height of the design, I'm guessing it was cast, and then these were struck. I mean, if you look at the back, that certainly was cast, and then these hallmarks were hammered into it. So the RDLI Bowling Club, no idea where that comes from, but Primus in Africa, I suggest would mean first in Africa. Um, Tiny little illustration, probably only 2 centimeters high. Also, this one.
Royal, it stands for Royal Durban Light Infantry Bowling Club.
Now you see.
That is the crest of Natal, you know, with the wildebeest are running.
Yes, yes.
Right. So that's the Royal Durban Light Infantry.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that solves it. Thank you, Anthony. And on the next one, it says our home and school in as a motto, ons familie, kring en school. And then I'm not sure what that South African homeschool. Not sure what that says. On the next spread, you see staring sort of very clearly is what seems to have been an early attempt at an SABS logo. And I think the version of the SABS logo that that I grew up with had a diamond shape in the middle of this ellipse, and had like more of like a square shape than a perfect ellipse. But this is not dated, and it seems to be an ink drawing on photographic paper, not a photograph. These are all photographs, and I'm going to go through them one by one. So the 1652, 1952, that was clearly for the Van Riebeeck Feast, and I'm not sure if that resulted in anything. But the royal visit of 1947, obviously Southern Rhodesia, which later became Rhodesia. This is dated the 13th of February 1947, a cartouche for something. I'm not sure what that ended up as. And then I saw this, when I first saw this design, I was puzzled at, what those numbers were doing there. But Hesperia Lodge turns out to be like a Masonic lodge, a South African Freemason lodge. I'm not sure what the symbology is behind the female figure and the dragon. This also features further on in another drawing. This is not a drawing, this is a photograph of an ink drawing. These seem to have been suggested designs for an obstetrics medal for the University of the Witwatersrand. And then these were 2 options, both for the obverse, one showing mother and child reclining, and the other one is a depiction of the Egyptian god Isis. The reverse again shows that typography of what the medal was for. But I think those are beautiful drawings, stunning drawings. Then the next spread is a very early sort of combination of Eskom and ISCOR mines with beautiful illustrations of different types of industrial installations. And also what you will immediately recognize as the badge of the SA school cadets. I remember wearing one of those berets, and some more designs, which seems to have been for either for the Van Riebeeck Feast or Volksspiele Invadingsfeest, December 1949, it says. And then also the Witwatersrand Technical College Mining Department, a battered drawing, and you can see that DASA drawing at the bottom there. So I just want to quick close-up, and I think the resulting badge looked exactly like this. And then a variation on the design we saw earlier. Instead of 1922, it says president. So this was probably regalia for the president, and very pronounced protractor holes of how these things were constructed, drawn by hand. Also interesting to note, at the bottom of this illustration, you can see the relief, or like a cross-section relief of what the designer's intent was for how the medal would be beveled. So here we see the what seems to be a watercolored drawing of the Potchefstroom Hospital coat of arms, or a design for a badge. It's actually done quite roughly. The design, the symbol elements are beautifully executed, might have been traced and then just roughly drawn around it. And then this wonderful illustration, which also makes use of actual silver paint. And I'm not sure what the background is supposed to indicate, but interesting to read these notes by the designer. Hands not modeled but flat with carved lines to indicate the fingers and sleeves. And then it says the profile. It shows the profile, saying that showing the lamp is standing in relief and modeled. The lamp is fixed upon the badge separately, to allow easy enameling of the shield. Shows you the fascinating detailed work that was done by the Mint, including, you can read the list of enamels used: dark blue, light blue, green, maroon, and white. Couldn't track this badge down. It looks like it was it was stunningly beautiful, a beautiful illustration. And then this design for I know not what, but it says Balfour Park at the bottom. It was obviously done from a negative that was placed on a contact placed on photographic paper, and the beautiful shading that happens on those three symbols would suggest that it was that the original design was was either done with oil stone or in the lithography process, or then it could even been on a mezzotint, which is an etching process, but a beautiful design. Beautiful symbols, absolutely stunning. And then also the South African Explosives and Chemical Industries, which is one of the few examples where you see foreshortening on the design of that equestrian design, partially obscured by the binding of the book itself. You see a key, beautifully ornate. And I can kick myself that I didn't take a detailed photograph of that design, but that's for the typographical union. I'm not sure what that key was for. And then the Transvaal Agricultural Society, the Northern Transvaal Agricultural Society, a medal that was designed. This on the right-hand side is, it says at the top, sweet bowls. So these were not ashtrays, but sweet bowls for Lubro, celebrating their 25th anniversary. And at the bottom of the page, the Low Wepener decoration medal. I'm sorry, I don't have a detailed photograph of that. It's actually quite beautiful, although I do have a photograph of a similar medal later on. You can see what the design intent of the original design for the medal translated fairly accurately, although the position of the tree was changed from the right-hand side to the left-hand side. Here we see what is, it says the R.N. Murray Nurses Badge, and just also which happens to be by chance the hospital that I was born in, the Moedersbond Hospital in Pretoria. And this illustration is about 1.5 centimeters tall. Wonderful detail, combination of paint, both green and white, with graphite pencil, and also this obscure little thing, fairly windswept Millie head for the Millie Raad. It says there 1953. On the next page, this is fascinating. So the first one is top left. I've got a detail of that. That's for the deputy mayor of Brakpan, the regalia designed for him. A fairly complex and convoluted coat of arms designed there. And this is, you can immediately recognize this from earlier illustration, the Hesperia Lodge, showing elements and Freemason symbology. The note on the right says to use Orphic Lodge. I'm not sure what the last word is, but to use the elements that were, I take it, originally developed for the Orphic Lodge, and you can see that female figure and the dragon. It's 1951. Now that's one piece, and also these. And you can see where they got these elements from the Orphic Lodge, which is also a Masonic lodge, and I think beautiful designs. Not sure what the writing at the bottom there says, and unfortunately these seems to have been cropped before they were pasted, so the dates were lost on these. Our only clue is 1944 on that badge in the middle. Here's another one, and those pins are just stunning. Very strange. I suppose they have meaning, but some rare examples of Freemason symbology. On the next page, now these are not drawings; these are photographs of drawings, and you can immediately discern these as a farthing, 3 penny, and 6 penny. And those designs would be quite well known, although you would note that these, I don't know if they are seeds or flowers or fruits, but they're quite different from what ended up on the actual coins. I'm hoping that people would do a screen capture of these images and then compare that to the eventual coins. I have no indication when these drawings were done, but it must have been done before 1930. And you can see here a farthing design, how it changed with the circular line element introduced. The 3 leaves were kept, the spiral was kept, but instead of 2, there are 10 of these little circular things. And it's interesting to see what the original design intent was, and what actually transpired on these coins. I think the modeling of those 2 Morses are actually quite stunning compared to the drawings, which is somewhat underwhelming. On the next spread, some beautiful illustrations. My favorite is this one in the center of the Cape Provincial Institute of Architects. A beautiful illustration with lots of linear perspective and human figure combination. I don't know what this design was for. It says motor rally, and it's got a beautiful illustration of like a stretched car with a bird flying off. Not sure what that was for. And some flying springboks. This seems to have been a way of testing the size, where a badge or some kind of die was stamped over a photograph to sort of test whether it would fit. It seems like a bit of a tight fit there. And then this thing, which is fascinating. Now that I figured out is Issy Smith, which was the wife of Jan Smuts. And during the war, there was something called Gifts and Comfort. So this pin, you can see what the original design says: Gifts and Comforts, 1944. And the eventual pin said 22nd of December 1944, SA Gifts and Comforts. But I think the likeness is quite accurate. Kind of looks like my grandmother. Maybe she posed for it. This is also dated 1944, so it would appear that it was rushed, because this was designed on the 5th of October 1944, and the pin would have made it to the troops in the same year. So this was probably a rush job. This is a badge designed in 1948 in 1949, the Wanderers Club. Also a tiny little illustration, quite beautiful. And this is a coat of arms designed for the Transvaal Amateur Swimming Association. And I couldn't find a metal version of this, but I did find an embroidered, as probably on the pocket of a blazer or a jacket. This seems to have been for some educational institution. I'm guessing it was done for the Normaal College Pretoria. It says onderwys is lewenwerk, which is education is to create life. Also tiny little illustration. And this, sorry to show it at a 90-degree angle, but this seems to be a photograph of Sitnaleti illustrations. Some beautiful examples, my word. Some of these things are exquisite. No idea where the originals are, but I didn't want to turn it the right way around, because then you would have to look at it half the size. On the next page also, Sithnaleti illustrations of orchids, it seems to be, and a beautiful, I mean, very pedestrian in the concept, but on this side of the other side of the spread is the proposed medal. It says for the Durban Centenary Commemoration, 1854 to 1954, and then also this fascinating, the Transvaal and Orange Free State Chamber of Mines award for bravery. Quite beautiful. The next spread shows proposed design for the Institution of Municipal Engineers. I think I've got a close-up of that, which is a quite beautiful design, quite complex at the bottom. Institution of Municipal Engineers, and then also Rotary International, the Governor's Badge of Office, District 25. And you can also see the profile of this design, what the intention was of how it should be extruded. Quite beautiful. Imagine, it's amazing to think that this drawing was done in 1951, and the intensity of that blue paint is no exaggeration on your screen. It is, it's beautifully brilliant. Then the next spread, not sure what that badge at the bottom is. It might be military. Seems to be military, that kudu head. And then quite interesting is if you look at the design, which seems to be for a medal, and if you look closely, you'll see that it says 1922. Oh, sorry, 1925. It's a South African coat of arms, and it says police service and then politiedienst. And interesting, that is in Dutch, not in Afrikaans. So probably by 1925, people were still using Dutch instead of Afrikaans for official applications. And this seems to be regalia for the president of the SAVMA. Not sure what that was. I'm sure someone would know. As well as a beautiful design at the bottom. Not sure what that one was for, but very traditional in design. Beautifully illustrated, and that's actually slightly out of focus, unfortunately, but a beautiful design. The next page, some designs, and two of them I'd like to focus on. The one is seems to be something to do with the Day of the Vow, or Geloftedag, and that seems to be an illustration of Andries Pretorius, and the illustration of the little church that was built on the site of the vow, or near it. And I've managed to track down the actual medal, or a photograph of the medal, which is very close to what the original design intent was. This says proposed medal, and Northern Rhodesia was, of course, Zambia, and that, I think, was the coat of arms of Zambia. It's quite American in appearance, but that's a beautiful illustration from 1954. And this is seems to be a medal that was designed for a stock show. Just absolutely fascinating. The alternating sheep and bull or cow heads that seem to surround a very strange tree with two chickens. Very weird design. The next page, you can see the proposed SA Mint trademark, and it would appear that that is actually the illustration that it was based on. It's either dated 1948 or 1943, and then also 48, and quite puzzlingly, it would appear that bullet, the second bullet between the A and the M, was drawn and then repositioned quite low to my mind. Not sure what that was. And then this is an award for Stellenbosch Agricultural College. I just thought that these were illustrations that were done in a combination of watercolor and colored pencil, were absolutely beautiful. You can see how the designer tried to give you an idea of what the final product would look like. Customs badge. This is probably part of a uniform. Quite basic, but showing the monogram of Queen Elizabeth II. And here we have an absolutely fascinating page of illustrations, and I'll take you through them. I just want to show you this one, which was the seems to be a medal award that was for the South African Association for the Advancement of Science. Some design alternatives, and I think those are beautiful illustrations also. And then these were obviously coins that were produced for South African internment camps or Union internment camps. And it's quite fascinating to see that designs were completed in both languages. And then the English one was crossed out and they wrote Afrikaans at the top here. Also see the Royal Mint Pretoria rubber stamp. And this is from 1941. Of course, these are well known and extremely valuable coins by now. It's interesting to note how they differ from the final pieces that were produced. Here, the Afrikaans one was scratched out for the 6 penny and it's written at the top English. 3 pence. Again, Afrikaans was crossed out. They wrote English. So it looked like they sort of made bilingual versions of each, and then eventually decided to go with to alternate between Afrikaans and English. Interesting how spelling mistakes also occurred in 1941. Double L in the word alleen, obviously, and interneringskamp is actually one word. Interesting to note how the arrangement of the typography actually changed from this concept drawing to the final one. Also, the beading was a lot smaller on the eventual coins. This is a medal, a 1950 designed for a 1954 medal, which seems to be the unveiling of the Paul Kruger monument in Church Square in Pretoria. And this is actually a combination of illustration and a photograph. That's not an illustration, that's a photograph, and then the typography was drawn over it. It seems to be that they would have a photographic process, the way in which we use scanners or photocopiers, and then they would do ink drawings on the photographic paper, beautifully mounted also on textured paper, these. And I'm not going to spend too much time on these, except to show you these illustrations. Now you can see in the book, they're about 3.5, 4 centimeters in diameter, these illustrations, but just the skill with which the typography was done, there's perfect spacing. It really is quite beautiful. This was an alternate design. I'm not sure which one ended up being used. I think this was the obverse. And also for the Kroonstad centenary, 1855 to 1955, beautiful ribbon design on the reverse of that medal. Another Zambian medal, Northern Rhodesia, which seems to be for loyal service in the copper fields and cold store. And does that say cold storage or gold storage? I think it says cold storage. Beautiful illustrations. I'm going to start speeding up now because some of these are sort of well-known heraldic constructs that people know quite well. But interesting to see that there was an honorary freeman medal for Middelburg, and quite fascinating. This is dated the 29th of April 1945, which was 9 days after VE Day. Sorry, let me just get back to it. 9 days before VE Day. So they knew that there was a peace medal coming. And it says at the top here, amended design for peace medal. No idea what the original one looked like. On the other side of the page, this beautiful coat of arms, and also painted, immaculately drawn, and very meticulously painted with combination of blue, black, red, and silver ink, actual silver ink. And you don't really see it. I think I have one illustration. This is a coat of arms for the municipality of the city of East London, and where they also, I think I've got an angle shot here where you can see two different types of gold paint that was used. Absolutely exquisite, absolutely beautiful to look at. And now we start running out of steam. So because now you can see that on the left-hand side, these are cake lifters in sterling silver, actual size, it says, two designs. One at the bottom was designed first, and I think they decided it should be more ornate. Unfortunately, these drawings are not dated, so we can't tell. And then after page 25 of the book, you see that there are some of these illustrations, or was it a photograph that is missing? But there are still some wonderful things that happens. I want to draw your attention to that letter opener in the middle. That seems to have been a gift that was designed and made at the SA Mint to Her Royal Highness the Princess Elizabeth and Lieutenant Philip Mountbatten on the occasion of their marriage, 20th of November 1947. Beautiful illustration of how they captured the marble, or is that of lapis lazuli, because it has some gold veins in it, it seems to have. And then that medal on the right hand side has got strange message. It says presented on behalf of the state, and the Right Honourable Dr. can't make out the name, his surname is Janssen, Governor General of the Union of South Africa, to Mr. C.J. Sibbett, it seems, for his services to thrift. I'm not sure what that means. 1919 to 1955. And it would appear that this medal was made for one person. At the bottom it says, aan meneer C.J. Sibbett vir sy dienste aan spaarsin, which is the Afrikaans translation of thrift. Would love to know if someone knows what this is about. And then also a design for the third Pan-African Congress on Prehistory, which was held in 1955 in the town of Livingston, with that beautiful design of the skull at the bottom there. And an absolutely stunning design for the Paarl Hospital, really beautiful, also executed in silver paint, and the Mayoress Burgemeestersvrou regalia of Beaufort West. Would love to know what happened to that. And just an absolutely stunning design, all done by hand, absolutely beautiful. And then the past mayor of the city of Durban, designed in 1956. Here we see some more hallmarks. These are also dated 1948 and 1947. Some time passed between the gold hallmark and the silver one, showing a springbok and a lion respectively. But to actually find the drawings for these hallmarks, absolute treasure. And then by page 36 and 37, we see some illustrations for what seems to have been a badge, and that these would have been enameled, because it says silver gilt and enameled there. And then what appears to be a coat of arms of Southwest Africa, dated 1962. Then some of the last drawings, and here you can see the person who compiled this album started not filling up all the pages, but this absolutely stunning design for the South African Medical Society, which I think is absolutely gorgeous. Wow, and not just the design, but also the way it was illustrated. This ostensibly seems to be typography design for some engraving that was done on something for the French ambassador and his wife, person by the name of Armand Gazelle, and it seems to be a gift or a souvenir of his for his in true friendship from his friends of Johannesburg, dated 1956. Would love to know the history behind that. And then what seems to be a lithography printed version of the design you saw earlier, also showing the different types of gold ink used. And the last page where you see that it's actually been filled is coat of arms for the city of Salisbury, some more Freemason regalia for what seems to be for a founder of the Athenaeum Lodge, and just some beautiful photographs of either lithography or mezzotins. This is the John Shard decoration commemorating Rorke's Drift, 1879. Beautiful illustration. And this is the last page that contains anything from page 54 onwards. The pages are sadly empty. And initially I thought that some of them were sort of cut out from the book, because that you can see, it would appear that you can see the binding. And initially I thought that these were cut out, that some pages were actually sliced out of the book, but it turns out that this is actually the way in which this book was bound, is that because these, what seems to be cut out, those little flaps, they are spaced quite consistently throughout the whole book, and that's the book, except for the very last page, which seems to be a trade diploma design. And although it isn't dated, except for 1951, at the bottom it says Unie van Suid-Afrika, Departement van Arbeid. And I think that this certificate was pasted in this book because it contains an embossing, and you can see that there's 4 embossings, and then the one that they tested on the actual seal. And this would have been the result of both a positive and negative embossing plate in a hand-operated embossing press. Quite beautiful, and that is the book that I have had the pleasure of sharing with you. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, Anthony.
Yo, I don't even know where to start. This, what you've actually covered here is numismatics as a whole, because numismatics is not just about coins. You've covered coins, you've covered medallions, and you've covered tokens. So this is actually fantastic. I just want to try and put my video back on. Are you able to see me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is actually fantastic. I mean, if I had to spend a day in the South African Mint vault, in their archives, I'll be a kid in a candy store.
Yes. Yeah, that's also the experience I had, and you can see why I had to share this, because otherwise, when we found it, I showed it around to my colleagues, and we spent hours, not hours, but we were poring over these things, and it's really very inspiring if you are in the numismatic trade. But it is really like a time machine, beyond just coins. Also, I think from a heraldic point of view, from a cultural point of view, from a political point of view, it's absolutely fascinating.
So I can relate to a lot of the stuff that you've shown, okay? And some of the stuff that you have shown, I've not seen previously. Obviously, they were prototypes or early designs that was proposed and not released. But I'm actually fascinated. I was actually stuck glued to my screen here. Normally, I take a walk around and do other things, but today I was actually glued to my screen just looking at this. I'm not sure if you've actually had the privilege of looking at Professor Michael Laidlaw's website that he's done. It's also a freebie. He's done it with so much of soul and heart to promote South African numismatics, and it's called SouthAfricanMedals.com, and it documents a whole host of South African medals that have been lost in the past. And I really have to take my hat out to him that he's done that. Most of the stuff that you've displayed is probably listed in his website if you have to search properly. But it's amazing how some of the designs have actually changed from the original proposals.
Yeah. Yeah, and also how some of them have stayed the same. So if you look on the shoulders of any nurse, a qualified nurse in South Africa, you will find that South African Nursing Council badge, which I think was first designed in 1944 and has remained exactly the same since then, and probably will for decades to come. It's absolutely fascinating, and it's also absolutely inspiring for a designer, for a historian. This is fuel. This is really inspiration, and also it's quite humbling to see how these things come from a different time when people had a lot more time on their hands. Things were crafted, they were finessed, and nowadays things are sort of like I think the quality of the design speaks for itself, and I shudder to think what the value of a book like this would be. It really is treasure, and we are very happy and very proud to say that not only this book but also other stuff that we've found that we hopefully will also share on this channel will become part of the library, will become part of the SA Mint Museum, where it can be stored with the correct humidity and safely protected, because this is Africana.
Absolutely, and I agree with you 100%. And never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that the Mint would actually have such items in their archives, and God only knows what other treasures there are there that could be of benefit not only to the viewers but to South African numismatics. I'm looking at your, and again, I'm going to ask you a question. Is this just part one, or is there part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to this book?
Yeah, look, I know of one other book that is in the possession of the Manufacturing Support and Development Department of the SA Mint. Tina Skeppers, who is the Mint's chief die sinker, has a book similar to this, and I was unable to secure that book and to photograph it. So I focused my attention on this book, and stayed late after work one evening and took these photographs, because it's the kind of thing that I think that needs to be shown, and otherwise would just stay there, no one would see it. So rely on me to find other things like this, and to share them on this channel. I will be back at the Mint on the 12th of September, and I hope to track down book number 2, and as soon as I have the opportunity to photograph it, I'll be sure to share it with you.
Absolutely, thank you. And you know what, from a personal capacity, I must really thank you. Speaking to you a few weeks ago, and when you mentioned to me that you're going up to Gauteng, I know that you live in Cape Town, and you make periodic trips up to Gauteng. And when you gave me that call to say that you've got a kick-ass presentation, I only fathom what that might be, because your previous talks have gained so much of viewership and comments that people are looking forward to it. And again, like you say, this is information that is only beneficial to the public out there, really.
Yeah, look, I can't take the credit for this, obviously, but I'm very happy to share it, and also to share my enthusiasm for these things. after going through this book, well, first discovering it, and I couldn't believe it. And with every turning of the page, it just got better and better. I mean, some of these things are really profound, like the square farthing, like the internment camp coins, and I mean, I can go on and on and on. But what is also fascinating is, like I said at the beginning, is seeing what the original design intent was and what eventually transpired on the actual coin. It shows you that the process of bringing a coin or a medal into existence is always a process. Is always a process of continuous refinement and finessing and augmentation. And it's absolutely, for me personally, it's absolutely fascinating to see some of the designs of very famous coins and how they actually transpire.
Yeah, I think myself and I speak on behalf of everyone that's going to view this video. I think we are privileged and to actually see stuff that might not have actually surfaced or being presented previously. And all kudos to you for making this available. Just a quick thing, you talk about the Union internment camp. I can tell you that those are tokens that were used in those camps. And up until recently, I'm privileged to own a full set of those Union internment camp. Wow. It took me 20 years of collecting to actually find the pound and the 10 shilling. Okay. Those are the rarest of the lot. Recently, Professor Francois Milan managed to obtain a full set, and he went and did extensive research onto the Union internment camp and produced a little booklet on it.
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
If I can get a copy of that booklet, I'm going to get it to you as my token of appreciation for what you've done, and I'll send it through to you. But that Union internment camp is absolutely stunning. It is of high rarity, especially the high denominations. I just want to touch on a few things, which I've made some points. I mean, there's so many things I would like to touch on, but obviously, we'll touch on it when we find more information. But the interesting thing was in 1932, quarter penny, which was depicted as a 1 cent.
Yes.
29 years prior to the first decimal series being issued. And it goes to show that the rands and cents was actually thought of way before anything could actually happen.
Yes, when I saw that design and I thought, like, hang on, this is a farthing, this is a quarter penny, but it says 1 cent and the date is 1930. It seems to be from an alternate reality. But I would be fascinated. And look, I most certainly got a lot of things wrong in the presentation that I gave, partly because we have not completed the research on it, partly because I'm far from a numismatic expert. So I would be very grateful to hear from people like Professor Francois Milan and anyone else that have anything to share. And I think that if they can put it in the comments, they can share it with anyone. Also keep in mind that you can pause this video and do a screen capture to have visual reference of something if you want to pursue its origin or where it ended up. So I'm really hoping that the true experts, such as yourself and serious numismatic historians, would be able to give us the insights that I just don't have. So I'll be very grateful for that.
I think after this talk here, you would be rated as one of the top 5 in South African numismatic gurus.
Hardly. Just because I had access to this book doesn't mean anything. I'm just happy to share it. And again, my perspective on this book is from a designer point of view, not from a numismatic historian point of view.
So two things I'd just like to raise as well, which fascinated me. Well, the whole presentation fascinated me, but the 1930 half a penny with the ox wagon. I mean,
Yes,
the first picture you depicted was a more horizontal picture of the ox wagon with a
yes,
sunbeam or a sunlight on the left hand side, and then you depicted the angled ox wagon with the full grown cover on it. Okay. Now
yes.
I can tell you that the coinage of the 1 cent in the decimal series, the full grown cover is of the highest rarity. And I cannot even fathom that this was actually done as early as 1930.
Well, probably 1929, because you would want to design a coin before the year it is issued. So, but yes, and to have not a photograph, because a lot of these illustrations or depictions are photographs of drawings that were found and pasted into this album. Perhaps if I can just share that slide again.
Yeah, sure.
It uh, sorry, let me just get this back on the. So what I find fascinating is that if you can also look at how this canvas cover of the wagon, the original design had it sort of completely rolled up, but by the time it got to a model, whoever modeled it sort of saw that the shape would be better explained by rolling it down ever so slightly.
Yeah,
That is absolutely gorgeous.
yeah.
Also, the amount of space that the wagon took up on the coin was increased by taking this. I'm not sure what you call this part of it, um,
The
and
shaft.
place the shaft and placing it underneath, sort of detaching it from the wagon and placing it underneath, removing the sun and increasing the size. Um, so,
So,
from a coin
so
design point of view.
one glaring thing that I'm looking at it now is if you look at the drawing itself, is that was the actual Boer ox wagon, with the front wheels smaller than the back wheels.
Yes.
But if you
Yeah.
look at the actual coinage itself, all the wheels are the same size.
Yeah. Also, that the amount of spokes on the wheel seems to have
Correct.
increased from the drawing to the actual model.
Yeah.
Although, given that this is presented in perspective, even if this was smaller, it would appear bigger than the hind wheel, um, by virtue of being closer to the viewer. But the amount of detail is just was substantially increased from the drawing to the model, which shows you that it was a collaborative effort, not just the illustrator, which is again E. Naylor, but that the modeler added his own value. So that would make this illustration quite insightful. What I find fascinating about this also is that the grounding does not conform to the circumference of the coin. You can see that this is a
Yeah.
like a semicircle, but it does not
Semicircle.
follow the curvature as this one does. So clearly, this was done first, and then the designer thought that he can improve on it. And certainly, this is a better drawing.
Interestingly, when looking at these drawings, even with the quarter penny, etc., and the coins that you've shown, is the scroll that separates the half and the quarter. Whereas
Yes,
your normal coinage is just a straight line dash.
yes. Also, if you look at these four proteas arranged in the shape of a square, how that also these shapes, these bullets on either side of the date, how they became these little diamond shapes,
Correct. Yes.
and how these proteas became those sort of much simplified elements. And it's conceivable that these were influenced by the design of the 1947 Steinbach design, which eventually became the Krugerrand, specifically as far as the grounding is concerned. Certainly, that's very reminiscent of the grounding of the springbok, and then also these like these diamond shapes, as indeed these ones, quite reminiscent of the Krugerrand, which by that stage had become like a well-known coin. And it's amazing how these traditions sort of echo into the future.
Yes.
Um, Beautiful, fascinating, absolutely
Absolutely.
fascinating.
Absolutely fascinating. If you look at this design, the dash that separates Said and Africa, we didn't
Yeah.
have it in your drawing as well.
Yes.
But I just want to go
I
back
didn't
to
notice that.
the last point, which fascinated me because I collect an area for the Prince of Wales' visit to South Africa in 1925. Okay.
Oh yes.
And you showed a lot of coronation or royal visit medallions, and especially for small towns, like Port Shepstone and
Yeah.
those kind of things.
Huh.
So my understanding is that there was an itinerary for this for the royal visit whenever they came down. Okay, and they normally travel by train or whatever mode, and they reach certain towns, and those towns that they actually went to had medallions made. So I mean, I've seen some for towns that are so small, and you would think, why the hell would they have made it? Tata, Port Shepstone,
Yeah.
even lodges, like you showed some of the lodges,
Yeah.
that they went and visited, and they issued medallions to commemorate the royal visit.
Yeah, one has to assume that examples, that the drawings that we have here is perhaps conceivably just a fraction of the ones of all the commemorative medals that were actually made. And if you think that what we see here, if I can go back to my presentation, is multiple designs that so especially for Bulawayo, there's one, there's another one. So each of these were probably 2 or 3 or 4 or more concept drawings that eventually became a final drawing that became a model. And who knows how many of these were made. You can see here, unfortunately I don't have a detail, but that is a beautiful design. And this one also seems to be
Are you
a
sharing the screen?
photograph. Sorry, I thought I was. Let me just do this. Can you see my screen now?
No, I'm unable to see it, but yeah, now I can see it. Yes.
Okay.
That's the 53 visit,
Yeah.
1953.
So you can see that this is a photograph of that drawing. So the drawing was made, and then a photograph was taken of it so that it could, on an enlarger in a dark room, they could actually make an exposure on photographic paper at the actual size. And this seems to be 38.725 crown size.
Sure.
There are some examples of these, and also alternate drawings. So there must be a whole host of these, and I would be very appreciative if people could let us know. So let's just see. We seem to have a generic coronation medal. I don't think that this was produced. Then there's one for Kimberley. There's one for Port Shepstone. There's one for East London. There's Bulawayo. Which other ones do we not see?
Yeah, I think Michael Laidlaw had actually extracted a list. I'm not sure where he obtained the list from, but
Yeah, I would imagine that his website would be very instructive as
I'm,
far as that's concerned.
I'm not sure whether it was the 47 or the 53 coronation. I just need to clarify that. But there is a list of all the towns and medals that were minted. I'll try and obtain that and send it through to you.
Please, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, brilliant. Yo, Richard, I'm beside myself. I'm looking forward to your next trip to Gauteng.
Yes.
Okay, with your metal detector into the vault. So hopefully you can pull out more treasures and actually share with not only South Africa, but I mean the rest of the world who's actually watching this channel, some of the treasures and some of the numismatic information that would never have surfaced had it not been for your input and for your commitment into passing this on to us.
Thank you, Anthony. I just also want to extend my thanks to Lillian Guerra, senior artist at the SA Mint, and as well as Charlene Bergman, knowledge management expert at the SA Mint, two of my colleagues who I believe at some stage saved this book from destruction and managed to take good care of it. So I think the credit should actually go to them. I'm very happy to share this with you. Let's see if I can, what else I can find. And if I do, you'll be the first to know.
100%. Thank you so much. And just please convey my regards and best wishes to Lillian and to Charlene as well. I will try and make contact with them, but thank you for their input. And hopefully I can get them both on the show as well, because I mean, both fantastic women, but very knowledgeable. And, you know, I know them both very closely as well. But Richard, once again, thank you for this wonderful presentation. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of questions being asked. And hopefully we can get more people from the Mint onto the show and have a panel discussion at some stage.
Let's see what we can do. Thank you, sir.
All right. So guys, thank you very much for your time. And we thank Richard for his input. From me, it's over and out. Just make sure that you subscribe to the channel, click on the bell, and you'll be notified of any future content that we upload to this channel. Once again, it's been a privilege, and good night to everybody. Thank you.